My daughter told the nurse I was too much and asked her to keep me out of the room. Weeks later, the hospital called and demanded I pay her bill because she'd listed me as the responsible family member. That was the day I quietly said, I don't have a child in California, and everything that came after began with that single, steady breath. Before I go on, let me say thank you for listening. These stories aren't easy to speak aloud, but they carry pieces of the life I've lived and lessons it took me years to understand. If you'd like to hear more from an old man sorting through the roads he's walked, I'd be grateful if you subscribed and told me where you're listening from. It's a comfort knowing these words travel farther than I ever did. I've lived most of my life in a small town called Cedar Ridge, the kind of place where mornings smell like wet pine, and every porch light feels like an old neighbor nodding your way. My house sits at the edge of the ridge. Nothing special, just a weathered white place with a stubborn screen door and a porch swing that groans louder than my knees ever did. Most days, before the sun stretches over the tree line, you'll find me in the kitchen, warming my hands around a chipped mug of coffee, listening to the kind of silence that only shows up for folks my age. I'm 67 now, and silence has a way of telling the truth even when people won't. This house wasn't always quiet. My wife, Linda, filled it with soft humming and the smell of fresh bread. She had a gentle way of living, a way that made even hard days feel survivable. When she passed 11 years ago, after a long illness that drained more than just our savings, the rooms felt bigger, emptier. But she left me with something worth more than anything else in this world, our daughter, Rebecca. Rebecca was the light in every dark season. My little girl with a stubborn chin and a heart too big for her own good. I raised her the only way I knew how, patching her jeans, cheering at school plays even when she forgot her lines, saving every extra dollar from night shifts so she'd never have to feel stuck in Cedar Ridge the way I sometimes did. When Linda got sick, Rebecca grew up faster than any child should. And when Linda passed, it felt like the world shifted, leaving just the two of us to hold it steady. I did everything I could for her, maintenance shifts at the mill, night security at the courthouse, fixing porch steps and leaking pipes for neighbors who insisted on paying me in pies even when I said no. Every job, no matter how small, felt like another brick in the road leading Rebecca somewhere better. And it worked. She earned a scholarship to a college in San Diego. I still remember watching her load her suitcases into a friend's car, the morning sun catching her hair just right. She hugged me tight, whispering, "Dad, I'll make you proud." "You already have," I told her. And I meant it with every part of me. After she left, the house settled into a kind of quiet only a parent knows. Half pride, half ache. But the phone calls kept me company at first. She'd tell me about classes she loved, friends she was making, the ocean she couldn't stop staring at. Sometimes I'd hear the waves behind her voice, almost like they were breathing for her. She graduated, stayed in California, found work in the tech world, something I never quite understood. But I saved every photo she sent, printed them, and taped them to the fridge. That fridge became a map of her new life, one I admired from a distance. Then came Adrian. I met him twice. Once during a rush dinner when they visited Cedar Ridge. Once at the wedding, a wedding that felt more like a business event than a family celebration. Adrian was polished, practiced. His mother, Margaret Burke, hovered over everything like a shadow made of money and expectation. I tried to fit into their world, but I always felt like a misplaced piece. Too simple, too plain, too much from a place they'd never consider home. Rebecca changed after marrying him. Not all at once, but slowly. A softened tone here, a distant pause there, and every time she mentioned Margaret, her voice dipped, like she was bracing for something. Still, I didn't push. Parents don't push. We wait. We hope. We pray. So I kept my routines. Early coffee, long walks, repairing anything that broke just to feel useful. I fixed the porch swing even though nobody sat in it. Trimmed hedges nobody complimented. Cooked meals large enough for two because old habits die slower than old bodies. And even through the loneliness, I found a kind of peace. A rhythm. A quiet I thought would last. Until the morning I opened my phone and saw a photo that changed everything. Rebecca and Adrian standing beneath soft studio lights, holding tiny pink baby shoes. Baby Emma, arriving soon. My granddaughter, announced to the world before I even knew. I stared at the screen until the coffee in my mug went cold. My chest tightened, not with anger, not yet, but with a deep ache I couldn't name. 3 hours later, I called Rebecca. She answered like nothing had happened. "Dad, we were just about to tell you. Things have been crazy." I congratulated her, even as something inside me trembled. That night, I opened Linda's old knitting box. She had saved the softest yarn, hoping one day she'd make blankets for future grandchildren. I picked up her needles, clumsy and slow, and began knitting for Emma, every loop a memory, every knot a prayer. For a little while, life felt warm again, full again. But that peace didn't stay, not for long. And deep down, I didn't know it then, but the silence that followed was the last real peace I would feel for a very, very long time. I still remember the moment I finally decided to make the trip. 2 weeks had passed since Emma was born, 2 long weeks of photos posted online, none of them sent directly to me. I tried to be patient. I told myself Rebecca was exhausted, overwhelmed adjusting to motherhood. But every night, as I rocked on that old porch swing, the silence started to feel heavier, like a truth I wasn't ready to look at straight on. One afternoon, after seeing yet another photo of Margaret holding my granddaughter, her arms wrapped around the child I'd never touched, I stood up, walked into the house, and pulled out a small suitcase. I didn't call first. I knew if I did, they'd tell me to wait. And I couldn't wait anymore. Not as a father, not as a grandfather. I didn't have the money for a last-minute flight. So I boarded a bus, 3 days of stiff seats, rest-stop coffee, and highways that looked the same no matter what state you were in. Through it all, I kept a container of homemade stew tucked safely in my bag, something warm to offer Rebecca, something familiar, something from home. By the time I reached the San Diego hospital, my legs ached, and my heart beat harder than it had in years. I texted Rebecca, "Here, at the hospital. I'd love to meet Emma." Minutes crawled by before she replied, "You're here? Dad, why didn't you tell us first? Wait!" "We'll send someone." She didn't come down. Adrian did. He walked out of the elevator looking irritated, like he'd been pulled away from something important to handle a problem he didn't want to claim. "Harold," he said. "Not Dad. Not Mr. Whitman. Just Harold. This really isn't the best time." I lifted the still warm stew. "I just want to meet my granddaughter." He sighed sharply through his nose. "Fine. 5 minutes. But please don't make this emotional." Emotional. As if love was an inconvenience. As if a grandfather meeting his first grandchild should be treated like a disturbance at a board meeting. We walked down a hallway so white it made my eyes sting. Nurses passed us with clipboards. Machines buzzed softly. And somewhere nearby a newborn cried. A thin, fragile sound that made something inside me loosen. Then, just as we turned a corner, I heard her voice. "Rebecca, my daughter." I stopped walking. She was speaking to a nurse, her voice soft but edged in something sharp. "Can you please keep him out of the room for now? Dad means well, but he's too much, and we really need family-only time. Family only." The words slipped through my chest like a blade made of ice. Adrian stopped, but he didn't turn. I don't know if he didn't hear it the way I did, or if he did, and simply didn't care. My feet felt heavy as we walked into the room. I forced myself to breathe slow. Steady. Controlled. Rebecca lay in the bed, pale but glowing in that new mother way. She looked up at me briefly. But her expression was tight, rehearsed. Margaret sat beside her, rocking Emma with practiced ease, like she had already claimed the role I had waited decades to fill. Margaret smiled politely when she saw me. The kind of smile you give a stranger who steps into the wrong elevator. "Oh, Harold, we didn't know you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you," I said quietly, voice steady from years of swallowing disappointment. Margaret stood partway, shifting Emma so the baby remained angled toward her, not me. Rebecca glanced at Adrian, then at me, but said nothing. I took a careful step forward. Margaret lifted a hand. "Would you mind washing your hands first? You came by bus, didn't you?" Her tone was dipped in sweetness, but the meaning was sharp as vinegar. I nodded, swallowing the sting. I walked to the small sink and scrubbed until my skin burned. When I returned, Rebecca finally looked at me, eyes glossy, tired, conflicted. The daughter I raised was somewhere in there, buried under layers of someone else's expectations. Margaret hesitated, then slowly peeled back the blanket. And there she was, Emma, my granddaughter. Small, warm, perfect. I reached out with hands that had held Rebecca through every scraped knee, every fever, every heartbreak. My fingers trembled, not from age but from awe. Before I could fully pull Emma against my chest, she fussed. A tiny cry, nothing more. Margaret swooped in instantly. "She's hungry," she said, already lifting the baby away. "Better if I take her." My arms were empty again before they ever felt full. I glanced at the clock. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. "Dad," Rebecca whispered, "we really need rest. Maybe lunch tomorrow?" I nodded. Even as the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet, Adrian walked me out, lowering his voice. "You should have told us before coming." But that wasn't the worst part. Just as the door closed behind me, I heard Margaret's voice, clear, confident. "He needs boundaries, Rebecca. You don't owe him access just because he raised you." My heart didn't break loudly. It cracked, quietly. I didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't defend myself. But something inside me went still, silent, cold. And in that silence, I knew I would not stay quiet forever. I didn't walk out of that hospital. I drifted, like a man who suddenly forgot how his own legs worked. The San Diego air hit me the moment the doors slid open, warm, bright, almost cheerful, completely wrong for the heaviness sitting in my chest. I held the container of stew tighter. It had lost its warmth hours ago, but I kept it close as if letting it go would make everything worse. Funny, I'd spent 3 days on a bus to bring that stew to my daughter. Now I couldn't even give her 5 minutes of my presence. I found a bench under a tall palm tree and sat down slowly, letting the ache in my back settle. Around me, life carried on untouched, new fathers pacing with coffee cups, nurses laughing on break, families walking in with balloons that said, "Welcome, baby." And there I was, a grandfather in a crowd of celebrations, holding a cold homemade meal and a quiet heartbreak. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, old hands, tired hands. Hands that once lifted Rebecca onto my shoulders so she could see 4th of July fireworks. Hands that fixed her broken toys, braided her hair when Linda was too sick, held her through nightmares. Now those same hands weren't welcome to hold my granddaughter. I curled them into fists, then loosened them again. Didn't help the shaking. When I finally stood and walked toward a motel down the street, the world around me felt distant, like I was watching it from underwater. The motel room smelled of cleaning spray and stale air, the kind of room people pass through, not the kind they come home to. I sat on the edge of the bed and placed the untouched stew on the nightstand. My chin dropped to my chest, and I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a slow, painful release, like grief finally remembering where to find me. I cried for Linda, for Rebecca, for Emma, for the man I used to be, for the man I had become. A man no longer seen as family, just an obligation, a footnote, a burden. The next morning, I forced myself to meet Rebecca and Adrian for lunch. I tried to pretend everything was normal. Rebecca talked about the weather, about the doctor's visit, about things that didn't matter at all. Not one word about the hallway or what she said. I handed Rebecca the knitted blanket I'd worked on for weeks. She lifted it, pressed her lips together, and set it back in the bag. "Emma's skin is sensitive," she murmured. "Wool was good enough for my daughter once, but not for her daughter." Adrian didn't hide his discomfort. "You really should have called first, Harold." I nodded and kept my voice steady. When the lunch ended, they walked away quickly. Rebecca didn't look back. I waited until they were gone before I walked the long route back to the motel. Each step felt heavier than the last. My shadow stretched in front of me across the pavement, thin, lonely, tired. Back in the room, I sat at the small desk and opened my wallet. Inside was a photo, Rebecca at her college graduation, leaning into me, smiling wide, sunlight catching her hair. In the picture, she looked proud to have me beside her. Where did that girl go? I traced the photo with my thumb. My throat tightened. The motel clock ticked loudly in the silence. That room felt smaller by the minute. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the mattress listening to the muffled arguments of the couple next door, the whoosh of passing cars, the buzzing of the fluorescent light above the bathroom mirror. I stared at my phone on the pillow beside me, hoping it would light up with a message. It never did. When I boarded the bus home the next morning, I tossed the cold stew into a trash bin. My hands felt empty afterward. The ride back to Cedar Ridge blurred into miles of gray highways and nameless towns. Rebecca's words replayed again and again. He's too much. We need family-only time. You don't owe him access. Each sentence struck the same old bruise inside my chest. When I walked through my front door again, the house felt colder than before. Linda's blanket on the couch. The empty porch swing. The fridge covered with photographs of a daughter who no longer saw me as family at all. I set my suitcase down and sank into the recliner. Dust danced in the sunlight, floating like memories too light to hold and too heavy to ignore. I whispered their names, not in anger, in disbelief. Some betrayals don't scream. They settle quietly into the spaces where love used to sit. And in that quiet, I felt something shift, not rage, not revenge, something steadier. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done pretending. A slow resolve began forming in my chest, soft at first, then firmer, clearer. I began to think very carefully. If you're still listening, thank you. Stories like this remind me, patience isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing an old heart can hold. When I stepped back into my house in Cedar Ridge, I waited for comfort to return, for the walls to feel like they were mine again. But something had shifted inside me, quietly, like a door clicking shut in the middle of the night. I moved through each room slowly, touching familiar corners. Linda's old cookbook on the counter, the frame of Rebecca's childhood photo, the handle of the kettle. Everything looked the same, and yet everything was different. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, letting the steam rise against my face. The kettle hissed softly behind me, the way it always had, but even its sound felt tired, as if it too had been carrying a weight I never noticed. 2 days passed. No call from Rebecca, no message, no apology, just silence, stretching wider by the hour. By the third morning, when the phone rang with a California number, my heart jumped. A foolish little hope that never quite dies in a parent. "Rebecca?" I answered. But the voice belonged to a woman from the billing department at Pacific Valley Medical Center. Her tone was clipped, professional, the kind reserved for people she'd never have to think about twice. "Mr. Whitman, we're contacting you regarding an outstanding balance for patient Rebecca Burke. Attempts to process the charges through the listed accounts were declined. You are listed as the financial guarantor." My stomach tightened. My grip on the phone went cold. She listed the remaining amount, $9,860. Almost $10,000. "Sir, are you able to arrange payment today?" Her question floated there, almost gentle in its indifference. I looked around my kitchen, at the fading wallpaper Linda had chosen, at the knitted blanket draped over the back of a chair, at the quiet life I'd built with hands that had never stopped working. And something inside me steadied. Rebecca's words echoed faintly in the back of my mind. "He's too much. We need family-only time. You don't owe him access." And then, the title of my own story settled into place. My daughter said I wasn't real family anymore, so I told the hospital I have no child in California. I breathed in, slow, controlled. "I'm sorry," I said. "You have the wrong person." The woman hesitated. "Sir, the information matches. I don't have a child in California," I said again, my voice steady as stone. "I am a widower in Pennsylvania. I have no connection to that family." Silence. Confused, uncomfortable silence. "Mr. Whitman, if we cannot collect from you, this will go to collections against Mr. Burke. It will impact his credit." "That," I said calmly, "is between you and him." And I hung up. My hand trembled for only a second, then stilled. For the first time in a long time, I felt something settle into place inside me, something like dignity taking its rightful seat. I poured out the cold tea and filled the kettle again, hands steady. Then I went to my bedroom closet, reached for the old wooden box that held my important papers, and carried it to the table. I laid everything out: bank statements, savings documents, my will, old insurance plans. I reviewed every line carefully, every signature, every beneficiary, not to punish Rebecca, not to spite her, but to finally protect the man I had spent a lifetime neglecting, myself. By noon the next day, I had updated every account with new security steps. Double verification, new passwords, restricted access. I spoke with the bank manager, a kind woman who'd known me since Linda was alive, and told her I needed everything locked down. Every account, every transfer, every future request. She nodded and made it happen. When I walked out of the bank, the air felt different. Lighter, sharper, mine. That evening I returned home and took a long walk along the ridge, listening to the wind comb through the trees. My steps were slow but sure. Not the steps of a broken man, but of a man who finally remembered the worth of his own voice. Days passed. Then a week. One afternoon, while the sun was sinking behind the pines, my phone lit up. 42 missed calls, 60 unread messages, most from unknown numbers. I opened one. "Dad," the hospital called. "What did you say?" Then another. "We need you to pay this. My cards are maxed." Then, "I can't believe you're doing this. You're being vindictive." And finally, "Maybe Adrian was right. You're toxic." I felt each message strike a place inside me that had already gone numb. I didn't reply. I didn't answer. I didn't explain. Instead, I powered off the phone and set it down gently on the table. Silence wrapped around me like a warm coat. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was choosing myself, choosing peace. And sometimes silence builds walls stronger than any words ever could. When the sun dipped low that evening, painting the sky with colors that reminded me of Linda's favorite quilt, I exhaled deeply. The stage was set. Everything was in motion. All I had to do now was wait. 2 months passed before the silence finally broke. It was a Thursday evening, the kind where the sky turns a soft orange before sinking into the kind of darkness that makes an old man reflect a little too deeply. I had just finished washing the dinner dishes when a heavy knock rattled the front door. Not a visitor's knock, not a neighbor's knock, a desperate one. I wiped my hands on a towel and moved slowly down the hallway. My knees protested with each step, but something deeper kept me steady. Through the peephole, rain blurred the shape of a man standing on my porch. Then he shifted, and I saw him. Rebecca's husband. No umbrella, no coat, just soaked through, shivering, holding a small suitcase. I opened the door. "Adrian?" My voice came out lower than I expected. He swallowed hard. "Mr. Whitman, please, can I come in?" His face looked nothing like the polished son-in-law I remembered. The self-assured smile was gone, replaced by fear, exhaustion, something near collapse. I stepped aside silently. He entered and stood dripping in the foyer, clutching the handle of his suitcase like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I gestured toward the living room. "Sit, I'll get you a towel." When I returned, he took it with trembling hands. He rubbed his face, ran the towel over his hair, then stared at the floor. For nearly a full minute, he didn't speak. Just breathed, shallow, uneven. Finally, "She's gone." I felt my chest tighten. "Rebecca?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "She left, Mr. Whitman. Packed a bag while I was at work, took Emma, took the car, took everything she could, said she needed space, said it wasn't working anymore, said I wasn't enough." His voice cracked. A sound I never thought I'd hear from that man. He looked up at me then, eyes red, jaw trembling. "And the bills, they're all in collections now. My credit's wrecked. I've been calling her for days, and she won't answer. Her family isn't helping either. They're done with me. I don't know what to do." He swallowed again. "I thought you hated me," he whispered. "But you're the only place I had left." I didn't speak. Not yet. Some truths land heavier when silence makes room for them. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. "We treated you terribly," he said. "I know that. I know you know that. And I'm not here to pretend otherwise. But I'm begging you. Please, tell me how to fix this." I let the words hang between us, slowly, purposefully. Not to make him suffer, but to let the weight of everything finally settle. "You can't fix what you refuse to see," I said softly. He lifted his head. His eyes searched mine. "You and Rebecca, you both forgot what family means. You forgot what respect feels like. You forgot that love isn't something you earn through convenience." His throat bobbed. "I know," he whispered, "and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I nodded once. A small gesture, but a powerful one. "Where's Emma?" The question came out more gently than I expected. "With Rebecca, somewhere in Los Angeles. She won't tell me where." I closed my eyes briefly. A granddaughter hidden from me again, but this time, at least, not by choice. I took a breath. "Adrian, listen carefully." He straightened, clinging to every word. "What happened to you wasn't my doing. It wasn't revenge. It was consequence. Rebecca made choices. Choices born from pride, from arrogance, from forgetting the hands that raised her. He nodded, swallowing the truth like bitter medicine. I leaned back in my chair, letting the fire crackle beside us. My voice softened, but sharpened at its edges. And now you understand what I understood in that hospital hallway. Sometimes people only learn after everything they leaned on crumbles beneath them. He bowed his head. Then in a voice barely audible, "Can I stay here? Just until I get my feet under me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Only under one condition," I said. He blinked. "You will rebuild your life from the ground up. You will get a job, any job. You will learn humility. You will earn stability. And when the time comes, you will fight for Emma. Not with anger, with steadiness, with patience." His breath shuddered. "I will," he said. "I promise. And Adrian." He looked up. "You will never again treat me, or anyone else, as if dignity is optional." The truth hit him like a wave. He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "Yes, sir." The room went quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Adrian sat straighter. The panic in his face began to settle into something else, something needed, something overdue. Humility. Resolve. A start. And as he exhaled, the smallest shift happened inside me too. The kind you don't notice until it's settled completely. In that silence, for the first time in years, I finally felt free. I sit on my porch most evenings now. The air in Cedar Ridge cools early, settling gently against my skin, carrying the kind of quiet a man can think inside. And as the light fades across the fields, I often find myself replaying the long road that brought me here. There was a time when the hurt sat sharp in my chest, as if my daughter's words in that hospital hallway had carved something out of me I could never get back. But pain has a way of softening when you stop feeding it. Silence has a way of teaching when you allow it to. I used to wonder if I'd made the right choice the day the hospital called. The day I said, "I don't have a child in California." I wondered if it was too harsh, too final, too cold. But now, watching the sky dim into lavender, I understand something I didn't back then. Sometimes the only way to save what's left of yourself is to stop sacrificing pieces of it to people who don't notice they're taking them. My daughter said I wasn't real family anymore. And maybe, in that moment, she believed it. But blood means nothing without respect. And love, true love, cannot survive where dignity is denied. I didn't choose revenge. I chose boundaries. I chose peace. I chose to stop giving my last breath to someone who never once noticed I was running out of air. Funny thing is, letting go didn't break me. It freed me. Because the justice I found wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't in the bills she couldn't push onto me, or the silence that followed, or the lessons life delivered to her doorstep. The real justice was remembering who I was before the world convinced me I had to shrink. These days, I help Adrian rebuild piece by piece. Not because he deserves grace, but because offering it makes me feel human again. And one day, maybe, Rebecca will walk the long road back too. If she does, I'll be here. Not waiting, but living. And if she doesn't, I've made peace with that too. Because respect, once lost, can sometimes be reclaimed, but only if both hearts are willing. And mine has finally learned to rest. Would you have done the same in my place? Tell me in the comments. And if my story meant something to you, I'd be grateful if you subscribed for more.